Okay, choose single view application and hit next. For the product name, type fun with flags. The language is going to be Swift, and you can deselect include unit tests and include UI tests. Do not forget your organization identifier because this step is very important. You don't need to create a Git repository on the Mac. And once you have deselected that, please hit create. If you don't have a developer account, you can skip this step. Just make sure that you select iPhone as the device and you make sure that portrait is selected. And then head on over to the main storyboard and let's get started. This project is going to be made up of 3 views. We're going to have a view for the header. The header is going to contain 2 labels and a smaller view. The purpose of the smaller view is to show the progress of the quiz, and one label is to record the score, and the next label is the score counter. So that's the first view that we're going to work on. We're going to work on the header view. So we're just going to drag a view onto the screen and position it in the header region of your canvas. Let's add some color to this header view, and I think purple looks nice. So we can rename the view header view, add our purple color to it, and now let's work on this view here, which is going to be the progress view or progress bar or whatever it is that you want to call it. We're going to put it so that it sits flush in the bottom left hand corner. So as we progress through this quiz, the width of this view is going to expand. So I'll give it a width of 15 and a height of 10. And we'll call this here the progress view. Okay, now let's drag our labels onto the canvas. So this first label over here, this is going to be the question counter. And I'm going to give it some placeholder text. And I'm just going to call it XX/25. And this here is going to show you, let's say that we have 25 questions. I'm not sure how many questions are going to be in this quiz, but let's say that we had 25 questions. This is going to show me how that text is going to look when it's on the screen. Okay, so you can choose your custom font, and my favorite font is Helvetica New, and I'm going to use a white font color because I think it looks really nice on a dark background. Okay, now let's, I keep saying okay a lot. Let's drag our next label onto the screen. And this screen here, this label, sorry, is going to contain our score. So every time the user gets a question right, the score is going to increase. We're just going to add some placeholder text, and I'm going to use my favorite font, Helvetica New. And we're going to make sure that these 2 labels are basically the same size. And for the font color, I'm going to choose white. Remember that when you want to resize your label so that it fits the text exactly, just hit Command and equal. Okay, we need to add some constraints so that we can keep our label in place. So I'm going to horizontally position it in the center of the container. And we're going to pin it, we're going to give it a height of about 60 pixels. And we're going to pin it from the top, the trailing, and the leading edges. So we're going to add these constraints. Next, we're going to add two views. The first view is going to hold the questions, and the second view is going to hold the buttons. Now we want to place both of these views in a stack view so that they take up equal space. So in order to do that, we have to select both views and select embed in the stack view. Now to get them to be the same width as the header view, we're going to control and drag to the header view and select equal width. Now we can add some constraints. So we want to horizontally position it in the container, and then we're going to pin it from the bottom of the header view and from the bottom of the main view. So we're going to select 0 pixels all around, 0, 0, 0, and 0. I'm going to change the color of these views so that you can see what is going on. So I'm going to select these views. I'm going to select the button view first, and I'm going to change the background color to red. Then I'm going to select the question view, and I'm going to change the background color to green. So I'm just going to experiment with these colors. Maybe green is not the best fit because the progress view is already green. So I'm going to go with magenta. And now I'm going to run this here on my simulator and see how it looks. And I just want to say that as a developer, I found that you have to install apps. You have to install apps on your devices or your simulators, and you have to run them many, many times just to make sure that everything is working the way it's supposed to work. And good. You've seen that it works as expected, so let's change these back to white and get started on the buttons. We're going to get some buttons from the object library, and we're going to drag them onto the canvas. Then we're going to add some placeholder text. And for this button, I'm going to call it Trinidad and Tobago. This is going to be my option A. And I'm going to give it my custom font, Helvetica New. And to make copies of this button, all you have to do, you have to hold on the Option key and drag. So I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to hold down the Option key and drag to make a copy. And we need 4 buttons because this here is multiple choice. And I'm just going to change the placeholder text. So obviously this here is going to be button B, Antigua and Barbuda. C is going to be St. Kitts and Nevis. And D is going to be Barbados. And by now you should have guessed this quiz is going to be about flags. So you're going to be seeing some flags in the question view along with a question. Okay, we're going to embed these buttons into a stack view. So what you have to do, you have to select all the buttons and hit embed in the stack view. And we're going to position them horizontally in the container. And rather than give these buttons a width, we are going to pin them from the leading and trailing edges of the container. So we're going to pin them 15 pixels from the leading edge, 15 pixels from the trailing edge, 15 pixels from the bottom, and 7.5 pixels from the top. So we're going to add these 4 constraints. select the stack view, and for the distribution, we want to select fill equally. And this makes sure that your buttons are going to be the same size. Okay, and for the background color, we're going to use purple. We're going to use purple for all of the buttons, actually. And the text color is going to be white. Now, at first, you'll notice that all the buttons seem to be squeezed up together, but this here can be changed, and I'll show you how that is done. After all the color has been added to the buttons and you change the font color as well, you're going to have to select the stack view, and in the section where it says spacing, you're going to be able to adjust the spacing between all of the buttons. So you can adjust it to suit your needs. These 4 buttons are going to be linked to one function. Now, in order to differentiate, we're going to have to add some tags to each button. So the first button is going to have a tag value of 1. The second button is going to be 2. The third button is going to be 3, and the fourth button is going to have a tag value of 4. Okay, let's just run our app to see how things look. Okay, we have our buttons, and the only thing missing is the image of the flag and the actual question. So let's work on that next. In this app, we're going to be using the ModelViewController approach. So this is a software architectural pattern where the application is divided into 3 interconnected parts. So I'm going to place the view controller and the app delegate in a folder called controller. I'm going to place the main storyboard and the assets into a folder called view. The launch screen .storyboard and the info.plist files are going to be placed into a folder called supporting files. Once that is done, we're going to drag all of the images into the assets folder. So you don't have to worry about creating any images. All of these images can be found on my GitHub page, and they're free to download. So there are a total of 23 flags, which means this app is going to be made up of 23 questions. The icons for this app were created using Adobe Photoshop, but you can use any other decent image editor to create these icons. We're going to get some errors here because Xcode cannot find our info.plist file. So all we need to do is tell Xcode where this file is located, and your app should build and run. Okay, don't worry about it, nothing is broken. Okay, we're going to need an image view for the flag, and we're going to need a label for the question. So we'll just drag a label onto the screen, well, onto the canvas. We're going to rename the image view flag, and we're going to rename the label question. Let's add some placeholder text to the question view. So make sure the question view is selected. And in this area, I'm going to type in a fact about Barbados. So this Caribbean country is home to cuckoo and flying fish. Rihanna, the popular R&B singer, is from here. And obviously we are talking about Barbados. Okay, remember to resize the view so that everything fits. You hit Command and equal. So add your custom font. And we want this here to fit on 3 lines. Okay, but when we resize it, you'll notice that it's only on 1 line. And the reason why it's only on 1 line is because we have not added any constraints. So let's position it horizontally in the container, and we're going to pin it 15 pixels from the leading edge, 15 pixels from the trailing edge, and 7.5 pixels from the bottom. And let's see what we get. Great. Now let's add an image to that image view. Let's work on doing that. So what we're going to do, we're going to select the flag, and we're going to position it horizontally in the container. Then we're going to pin it 15 pixels from the leading, 15 pixels from the trailing, 15 pixels from the top. And we're going to add these 3 constraints. And our flag looks a little off. Well, it kind of does to me. It looks too, I don't know, too rectangular or too oblongish. Okay, so go into the image view and let's add a flag to see how it looks. And let's choose aspect fit. And that seems too small. Aspect fill seems too large. We seem to have a problem here. Now, you can delete these constraints by selecting on the constraints that we just added and hitting backspace. So all of the constraints that are related to flag, we can delete them. And let's try this again. So we're going to select the flag. We are going to, let's see, we're going to pin it 15 pixels from trailing, 15 pixels from the, sorry, that's 15 pixels from the leading, the trailing, and this time we're going to specify a height. And we're going to run that and see how it looks. And I don't think that is what we want, because you cannot see the score counter and you can't see the score. So this layout isn't working. So let's delete those constraints and try again. Don't worry, this happens a lot in Xcode, and many developers have given up on using storyboards whenever they are designing their apps. So don't worry, because this happens pretty often. Okay, this time we are going to specify a height of 160. And that seems to be working. So let me hit play and run this app and see what we have. Okay, great. It looks a little bit better. You can see the score counter and you can see the score. And if it needs to be adjusted, we can always come back and work on that later. But for right now, let's dive into our code. Okay, so let's hide our utilities panel. And let's open up the assistant editor. Okay, we want to be able to see our canvas and our view controller. So let's control and drag from the question counter over to the view controller, and let's make an outlet. Let's create one for the score as well. We'll call this one score label. And let's make one for the progress view. So you may have to zoom in. and just control and drag and create another outlet and call it progress view. Zoom out and create an outlet for the flag view. So you're going to control and drag, and we'll call this one flag view and hit connect. The type is going to be UI image view. We're going to control and drag from the question label, and this one's going to be question label, and it's of type UI label. And now let's create an outlet for the buttons as well, because we're going to be changing the text on the buttons, so we need to create an outlet. Each button is going to have an individual outlet, so we control and drag, and the type of all of these outlets is going to be UI button. So we're going to do this for all 4 buttons. So we're going to have option A, option B, option C, and option D. And hit connect. Now we're going to select one of the buttons and control and drag down to the bottom of our code. So I'm just going to give myself some space. So control and drag to the view controller. And this time, instead of an outlet, we're going to select action. And the type is going to be UI button. And the name of this button is going to be answer pressed. So type that in and hit connect. And we're going to control and drag. And when the area is highlighted, we are going to release the mouse button. And that way, all of these buttons are connected to the same action. Each button has a different tag value. So we're going to use an if statement, if and else if and it else. We're going to use that to determine which button was pressed. So we can use this thing called sender.tag, and that usually returns an integer. So we're going to test to see which button was pressed. So if we press button A, it's going to print option A. If we press button B, it's going to print option B. And if we press button C, it's going to print button C. And if we press button D, it's going to print option D. Now it's time to work on our model. So we're going to create a new folder, and we're going to call it model. And this folder is going to contain our model class. So remember, in object-oriented programming, a class is basically a blueprint for creating objects, and we're going to be creating a question object. So each question object is going to have a flag, it's going to have a question, it's going to have option A, option B, option C, option D, and it's going to have the correct answer. So let's start working on this class. So we're going to say let question image be of type string. Let question be of type string. Let option A be of type string. Let option B be of type string. Well, basically all of these options are going to be strings. But the answer is actually going to be an integer. So the correct answer is going to be an integer because the sender.tag it returns an integer value. Classes need to be initialized. In object-oriented programming, initialization is the assignment of an initial value for a data object or variable. This initializer method is going to have some parameters. These parameters are going to be image, and this is going to be of the type string, question text, string, choice A, choice B, choice C, and choice D. All of them are going to be of type string, and then we are going to have an answer, and this is going to be of type integer. Now we're going to set the values between the curly braces. So we're going to set the values of these parameters between the curly braces. So question image is going to be image. Question is going to be question text. Option A is going to be choice A. Option B is going to be choice B. Option C is going to be choice C. Option D is going to be option D. Well, sorry, it's going to be choice D. And the correct answer is going to be answer. And that's all that we need in order to create our question object. We now need to create another Swift file, and we're going to call the Swift file QuestionBank. QuestionBank is going to be a class. So let's say a class QuestionBank. And QuestionBank is going to be made up of an array of question objects. So we're going to create a property varlist is equal to an array of question objects, and that's how you go about creating an empty array of question objects. Now, as mentioned before, we need an initializer method, and to add items to a list, we use the append function. And once you start typing question and you open the parenthesis, you get this wonderful autocomplete feature where all of the parameters have been automatically typed for you in Swift, which is really cool, by the way. Okay, and then you just start filling out the different fields in your question object. Okay, luckily for you, you do not have to type out all of this code. If you need a copy of this, you can just visit my GitHub page and you can copy and paste all of this into your project. Now that we have a few questions to work with, let's head on over to viewcontroller.swift. Let's create a constant called allQuestions, and that is going to hold our QuestionBank object. Let's create a variable and call it QuestionNumber, and this is going to be of type int, and we're going to set the initial value to 0. Let's create a variable called score of type int and set the initial value to 0. Let's create a variable called selectedAnswer of type int, and let's also set the initial value of that to 0. It's good practice to break our code into small bits. So let's create some functions. But first, let's delete the code block that we have in the function answerPress. Let's create a function, call it updateQuestion. Let's create another function, and we can call this one update the UI. Let's create another function, and we can call this one restart quiz. Let's work on that first method, update question. So we're going to set the flag image. I'm just going to double check to see the name of my label. So it's called flagView.image, and we're going to set it to UI image. Named. This is how you go about changing the changing UI images, and we're going to set it to all questions dot list question number dot question image. We're going to set the question label.text. So we're going to change the text to all questions dot list. Remember, list is the array, and question number represents the index of the array. And we're going to set that to question. Oh. Okay, next we're going to set option A. We are going to set the title to all questions dot list question number for UI control state dot normal, and we're gonna basically copy this for option B, option C, and option D. And the only thing that is going to be different is the part that says option A, because we're just going to change the A for a B, change the B for a C, and change the C for a D. Right, so selected answer is going to be equal to all questions dot list, and we're gonna pass in the index number of question number, and we're gonna select the correct answer at that index. So that there is going to return an integer. Now it's time to work on our logic. If the tag value is equal to the selected answer, which by the way is a bad name for this variable, we are going to print correct to the console, and we're going to increase the score variable by 1. Now, if it's wrong, so we're going to use an else clause. So if the answer is wrong, we are going to print wrong to the console. Okay, then we are going to call update question. And that means that we need to be able to increase question number. So we're going to say question number plus equals to 1, because we want to go to the next item in the array. Now we're going to call update question in the viewDidLoad method, so that the first question is loaded whenever we run the app. So great. Now we have some auto layout issues. Please don't get frustrated at this point. Auto layout has been known to cause a lot of problems. And if you stick around, we're going to sort those out. Okay, so the app seems to be working, but we have some auto layout issues. So what I'm going to try doing, I'm going to change the content mode. Instead of aspect fill, I'm going to try aspect fit. And I'm going to try to run the app again and see if we get success this time around. Yep, it seems to be working. I'm pretty sure that I tried this here the first time around and it did not look like that. Well, that's auto layout for you, but we now have another issue. The text is being chopped off. So we either need to decrease the amount of text, or we need to increase the amount of lines that the text is supposed to fit on. So I'm going to select my question view, and I am going to change the number of lines to 4. I'm going to run the app again and see what happens. And just remember, if you're building apps, you don't usually have, well, if you're working with a team, you don't usually have to do all of these things by yourself. One person is going to be responsible for the UI, and another person is going to be responsible for the code. And great, it works. Okay, by now you're probably wondering what happens when we get to the end of the quiz, when we run out of questions. Well, honestly, what happens is that the app is going to crash because there are no more questions. So we need a way to, prevent that from happening. So what we can do, we can, like say if the question number is less than the number of items in the array, and we can get the value for the number of items in the array by using the .count method. So if it's less than that, it's going to increase the question number, and if it's more than that, then we're going to have to use this thing called an alert. And now you're probably wondering, what is this thing called an alert? Well, in order to use an alert, you need a UI alert controller. And I'm going to be very, very honest with you. If you want to be a developer, you have to be very patient and you have to love to read, because the instructions on how to use this UI alert controller are on the Apple developer website. And if the answer is not clear on their website, you can always go over to Stack Overflow, and sometimes you can copy and paste code from Stack Overflow. And when I first started programming, I used to ask myself, why am I just copying and pasting code? And well, I can answer that question no. Coding, programming, coding or programming, whatever you want to call it, involves a lot of copy and pasting, and a lot of reading, and a lot of patience. And if you're new to programming, most questions that you have already been asked, and solutions have been found in most cases. So let's run this app and see if I know. Let's see if I know what I'm talking about. Okay, so it seems to be working. And oops, we have an error, and it seems like we ran out of questions. The alert that we just created wasn't triggered, so let's see if we can go about fixing that. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to remove this line from here, and I'm going to place it above update question and my answer pressed function. Now my answer pressed function is only called when I click on one of the buttons. Now I'm going to take this code block here And this here needs to go into an if statement. So if the question number is less than or equal to all questions.list.count minus 1, we're going to run that code. And if it doesn't, then we're going to call the alert. Currently, we have 6 questions in the array. When we call the .count method, it returns 6. When we subtract 1, it returns 5. Basically, we are saying that if the question number is less than or equal to 5, we are going to update the flag, the question, the options, and the answer. If question number is more than 5, then we go into the else clause, where we call the alert. In that alert, we call restart action. So we need to work on that next. Let's run the app and see how it works. And it seems to be working okay. And when we hit restart, nothing happens. So we need to stop that. And we need to work on the function restart quiz. So we're going to set the score to 0. We're going to set question number to 0. And we're going to call update question. Now let's test the app and see if it works. Okay, so it seems to be working. And we restart the quiz and we are back at the first question. Great. Now we need to work on updating the user interface. So that involves updating the progress view, the score label, and the question counter. So the first thing that we are going to update, let's update the score. And we're going to set the text equal to, for this one, we're going to use string interpolation. So we're going to type a string here, and we're going to insert the variable using a backslash and parentheses. Okay, now we want to work on the question counter. We're going to update the question counter using the same thing, string interpolation. Because normal people start counting at 1, we're going to have to add 1 to the question number. If we didn't add 1 to this question number, then the question number would start at 0. Okay, so let's run our app and see what we have. Right. So you'll notice that the score and the question counter are not being updated, and the reason why they're not being updated is because we forgot to call that method update UI. So we need to call that method in 2 places. We need to call that in the view.did.load. We also need to call it at the bottom of update question. So let's run our app and see what we have. Okay, so the question seems to be updating, the score seems to be updating. Okay, it seems to be working as expected. And we just need to work on the progress view. We need the progress view to change the width every time a question is axed. So in order to do that, we're going to say progressView.frame.size.width is equal to view.frame.size.width divided by all questions dot list dot count. Okay, so what this is going to do, this is going to divide the progress view into, let's say that there are 25 questions. This is going to divide the progress view into 25 pieces. And we're going to multiply it by the question number plus 1. And every time the question number increases, the progress view is going to increase in size. So just remember that the progress view, when we're dealing with the width, we're dealing with a CG float. We're dealing with float values. So in order to multiply, you can't multiply a CG float by an int. So you have to cast question number plus 1. You have to cast that to a CG float. And you have to do the same thing for all questions.list.count because that returns an int, and we need to cast that to a CG float. Okay, the last thing that you need to do is run your app, and let's see if it works. British, okay, so Anguilla, Antigua and Barbuda, Bahamas, Barbados, Jamaica. Awesome. So I scored 5 because I think I got one wrong. Okay, and that's it for my multiple choice quiz. We've finally made it to the end of this video. If you enjoyed my content, please give me a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more videos like this, you can hit that subscribe button. And if you'd like to find this code, please check out my GitHub page. And as always, thanks for watching.